Welcome to Amici, news and insight from the New York Judiciary and the Unified Court System. I'm John Carr. Today's program is another episode of Diversity Dialogues with Susan Goodman. Today, Susan's guest is Tamara Kersh, the Chief Clerk in the Queens County Supreme Court.
Okay, so thank you for joining us, Tamara, and I just wanted to begin with a kind of lay the foundation. What three words would you use to describe your current role?
I think my current role is one in which I'm very busy, multitasking a lot, and a manager of the operations of the court system here in Queens Supreme Court.
And can you tell us what that involves to a degree? I mean, obviously, you can't include everything.
Okay. Well, as the chief clerk in Queens Supreme Court, the civil term, I am actually in charge of the daily operations of two courthouses, one located in Jamaica and the other one located in Long Island City. So as part of my day I come in, I assess what's on the calendar that day, what we need to do, if we have any issues or meetings or things like that, and I try to make sure that everything is running as it should, smooth operation. If there are any issues, to address them, anything that needs special attention, to address it before it becomes a problem.
Can you give us an example?
For instance, like tomorrow, I know, for instance, there's a matter on the calendar in which one of the individuals can be, it can be erratic in his behavior. So today I'm already looking at the calendar ahead of time to see what that calendar looks like, if we can have him called in when there are less people in the courtroom so he impacts less people. I understand that he's upset about what is going on, and that's one of the things that you have to manage, also dealing with people who are upset. But I want to have whatever his experience is not impact other people.
Mm-hmm. Do you have another example maybe of something maybe less dramatic?
Well, I think in the course of working every day, we have to deal with individual employees also and different situations that they may be encountering. And so it may cause us to have to make changes in the assignments. Because maybe an employee is not feeling well that day, or maybe an employee has some issue in their family that they need to address. So there are different things that we do during the day, and it's just, like I said, you have to be, you're busy, you have to multitask, and you have to be flexible. You have to pivot on a moment's notice.
Right. So pivoting to diversity, how would you say you encourage people to honor their uniqueness?
One of the things that I like about being in this job is that it has allowed me to see people's individual strengths and things that they bring to the table. So keeping in mind with diversity, I'll go back to something my grandmother always said: people are the sum total of their life experiences. So different people experience different things. So what I like to do is I like to get to know the employees. I like to know something also about their life as well. So in getting to know them, that helps me to assign them to places where they flourish, and it helps me to assign them to places where they really address the needs of the individuals, the diverse individuals who come into the court as well. So it plays to both strengths, the employees and the need of the public.
And how would you say that specifically impacts, like, the minority population?
Well, for instance, there are certain, you have to be aware of certain cultural issues because you want to provide quality service to everybody. You never want to demean anyone. And so what you want people to know is that what is different and unique about them is different and unique. It doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. It's just different and unique. And so we try to find out and understand how we can assist them and that means that we have to sometimes ask questions. We have to dialogue with our employees as well as the people who come in to the court to understand.
To get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, to get to the bottom of it. I mean, even if something as simple as a speech pattern may be very different. You may be saying one thing and a person is interpreting it as something else. So when we have people who really understand and represent the diversity of the court, it helps to have a comfort level with those we're serving.
And what would you say your biggest achievement to date is, personal or professional? And if you want to include some part of the diversity, question as well in that, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. Well, I think professionally, my biggest, the thing that I'm most proud of, I think, would have to be being appointed to the chief clerk position. When I became the deputy chief clerk, there was a move within the Office of Court Administration to have a greater push toward diversity and promoting people who hadn't been promoted before. And so becoming the deputy opened my eyes to a lot of different things that maybe I hadn't seen in the court that we needed before, because I only saw the court from maybe my smaller perspective. But when I became the deputy, I started attending meetings. I started, getting out more and walking the court and seeing the different departments. And that's when I realized that, we had so much that we could do with our staff that would promote, greater diversity, and also would make people coming into the court feel very comfortable. Because I think when you come into the court, you have to realize that people are coming in because something is going horribly wrong in their life. And so when they come in, they have to feel comfortable with whom they're speaking to. That's the only way we can assist them. So again, that's going back to the strength of, I encourage the employees to bring their unique talents and their experiences to the table, because it does help us to provide greater service to people of diverse backgrounds. We have people here who, as hobbies, they've learned how to sign language, how to sign. There's something they were interested in. That's something we may need at a moment's notice. So if somebody comes in, if I don't know that I have somebody here who can sign, then I'm denying that person or delaying what the person came to court for, because I can't service them. So again, that's why I say the uniqueness of our employees helps us to serve a diverse population in Queens. Queens is very diverse.
Isn't it the most diverse? The most languages spoken, I think, in any.
It is.
Yeah, I think so. Any place in the world.
It is. In Queens, I told somebody one time, I said, if you go to different parts of Queens, it's like you left the country, but you never went anywhere. You can go to any country and still be in Queens, because it is so diverse. And I love that about Queens.
Yeah. So if you can combine these two questions, what do you like most about your new job, and how would you describe a typical day?
Okay. Well, what I like most about my job is that I get to be the change that I hope for. Like, I get to see things that need to be changed, and I get to put that in place and to see it develop and grow. And when I say that, I mean, again, going back to the employees and how we provide service and the different things that we do. But it's also more than that. You get to see a person who comes into the court and maybe they have a negative impact about the court, but through your interaction with them, they leave feeling better about the court. They may not be 100% satisfied with the outcome, but they will understand it better. And so the other thing about what's the typical part of the day here is funny is there's no typical part of a day because you can plan the best way you want, but it never quite goes the way you think it's going to go, because that goes back to saying you got to be flexible and pivot on a moment's notice. What I like to do typically is I like to come in, get myself settled, and look at things that I need to do. I actually send myself every night a to-do list for the next day.
Wow.
So I send myself this to-do list, and I come in and I get started, and sometimes by the time I get to the third thing on the to-do list, something has come up that has changed it.
Right.
But then as the manager, I have to prioritize. So then I still have the flexibility to prioritize and go back and do things as they need to be done. So I do like the fact that I can impact the court in a positive way with change. And I also like the fact that I'm never bored. You're never bored in this job.
That's wonderful. And do you have any people that you would consider mentors? And if you do, can you talk about why and how they've impacted you?
They've been, I've been very fortunate that I have met wonderful people along this journey in the court system, and I've met people who really encourage me a lot. Serena Springle is a person who definitely comes to mind.
Can you spell her name for me?
Serena, Serena, last name Springle, Springle.
Okay, and what is her position?
Serena is the borough chief for Manhattan Civil Court.
Borough chief for Manhattan.
Borough chief, yeah. Serena and I met years ago, and she's just one of those people who's always encouraged you. She would say, you could do that, you could do that. Everybody who knows her knows that she calls everybody Boo. She'll say, Boo, you can do that. And even when I didn't see things that, I would say, I'm not sure, Serena. She would say, trust me. I wouldn't tell you to do this if you couldn't do it. Renee Jones is another person who has mentored me and, in fact, trained me when I started in the court system.
And what is her position?
Renee is the principal court clerk in charge of the mental hygiene department. And,
principal court clerk?
Yes, principal court clerk.
In charge of mental hygiene?
Mental hygiene.
Okay. And that's in Queens?
That's in Queens.
Okay.
And I just, like I said, I've met so many different people.
With Renee, do you have any specific mentorship role that she played that you want to recount?
Well, when I came into the court system, Renee actually is one of the people who trained me. And so when I first came in and I was nervous about the job and I wanted to do a really great job, Renee said to me, she sat me down and said, take your time, look at what's happening, take it in what's happening, and then you can decipher how you need to proceed. She always said to me, a calm worker is the best worker.
Right.
Because you're so focused on what you're doing, you know what you need to do. She said, when you get frazzled, you lose sight of where you're trying to go. And so I've always tried to maintain that approach and say, okay, and even in the midst of, what somebody else might say is chaos, as a clerk, I've been able to say, well, let me ask you this question, to still try to decipher where we need to go to get the information.
So you always ask another question.
Yes.
And what would your words of advice be to those who are either in the court system now or who wish to advance within it, and who are outside the court system and want to, enter, apply for a job, and those who wish to advance within it who are already in the system?
Okay, well, to those persons who are looking to enter into the court system, I would encourage them to take every test that they can to get into the court system. I came in through testing through the civil service system. I would also familiarize them with the court webpage where they could actually see job postings for positions that are not testing. There are two ways to come into the system, and I would encourage them to avail themselves of whichever system they believe would benefit them and they're qualified for. Since the two systems are not mutually exclusive,
Right.
you can test and you can apply for appointed positions. So I would encourage them to really familiarize themselves with the court system. For those persons who are already within the court system, again, we have the two roads that you can travel and to advance. You can go through the competitive test-taking system as well as the appointment system. I would encourage people to be able to advance themselves by soaking up as much information as they can. Knowledge is power. When you apply for positions, you need to go in the room and have the knowledge that would make you be the candidate that whomever is hiring, they would pick. So what I've always told people, and this is something that I live by myself, I've never done, if the job says you have to do A and B, I've never just done A and B. I've always wanted to know C, D, and E as well, because that would help me later. And it helps me to help people now, but it also helps me understand what I'm doing and where the job is going. So I encourage people to learn as much as possible and to not be afraid to apply for positions and show that they have the knowledge. Don't be afraid that you won't get the position, and so you say, I'm not going to apply. I read a book and I listened to people speak, and they said, successful people have something in common, and that's that they failed at many things prior to their success. So I think in the trying, even if you're not successful that time, it gives you more experience. So I think that I would tell people, just try everything and continue to try. Never get discouraged.
Right. And before you leave your position, what would you like? How long have you been in the job that you're in now?
I have been in the job just slightly less than 5 years.
5 years, okay. So obviously it's going to be a long time from now, but before you leave the position, what would you like your greatest achievement to have been?
I would definitely like my achievement to have been that I impacted people in such a positive way that those people pass that down, so that the things that I've instilled in them becomes an institutionalized way of handling things. And when I say institutionalized, I don't really like that word so much, but I would like to say more an ordinary standard operating procedure. I want people to be treated well. I want people when they come in the door to not be afraid. So I'd like what I impart to people for them to pass it along to other people, and hopefully it'll have a better impact to leave the court in a better position than when I started in 1991. But the other thing I'd like to say is that when I leave the court system, what I'd like to see is that we're no longer saying, oh, that's the first African American woman to get that. That's the first African American man to get that. I like it to be, that's just the norm. Whomever gets it, you remove that word first. If you're the first, it certainly is an honor and a privilege to be that, but you don't want to be the last.
Thanks for listening to Amici. You find all of our recent podcasts on the court system's website at www.nycourts.gov, and most are also in the iTunes podcast library. If you have a suggestion for an Amici podcast, please let me know. I'm John Carr, and I can be reached at 518-453-8669 or jcaher@nycourts.gov. In the meantime, stay tuned.